Welcome to the Rural Recharge, a podcast from the Florida Farm Bureau Federation. The Rural Recharge is a guided conversation that allows you to cut through the noise and multitude of information out there. You should be able to trust your sources, which is why we're a platform that comes straight from the source of farmers and ranchers that grow what we eat, wear, and use every day. Our guest joining us today is Mrs. Victoria Hunter, a multi-generational farmer in Seville, Florida, and nursery grower with FernTrust Incorporated. She's also a seasoned member of the Florida Farm Bureau Federation Board of Directors. Victoria is the chair of the Women's Leadership Committee and dedicated to the success of the Voice of Agriculture. Victoria, thank you for taking time to speak with me today. It's a blessing to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So to start off, Victoria, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So as you said, my name is Victoria. I live here in Volusia County, the booming metropolis of Seville. Technically, I live in DeLand. It's a little bit larger, but still on the relatively small side. I have worked here at FernTrust since birth. We joke that my father had kids to have farm employees, which I think is a pretty common thing in the agricultural industry. But my position here now as the Director of Sales and Marketing, I took over in 2021. So a few years now, getting seasoned more. But all my life, family vacations and trips have all revolved around some facet of agriculture, whether it be FernTrust trade shows that we're going to, Farm Bureau events. I've worked from the bottom up here. That's one thing I will say when you're in a family-run business, you work from the bottom up. You definitely earn your place. So like I said, I think I've worked here since middle school, paid and unpaid even sometimes. So that's just a little bit about me.
We're in Seville, Florida, and it's in Volusia County. Tell us, most people may not know where Seville is.
Yeah.
And not only where it is, tell us a little bit about it. What's it like in Seville?
Yes. Well, it's very laid back because we have, I think, a population of maybe 2,000, and that's stretching it. I just want to make us look a little bigger than what we probably are. But I like to say that we're in the middle of nowhere and the middle of everywhere.
That's right.
So large cities surrounding us. We're about an hour and a half south of Jacksonville. Let's think about my geography here. East of Gainesville, west of Daytona Beach, and north of Orlando. So smack dab in 4 very large cities.
That's right.
But nowhere at the same time. So we have a flashing caution light that we lay fame to. That's our claim to fame. But it is very laid back, very agricultural based, very close to a lot of cut foliage in this area. Most of it is grown right here in this 3-county little area between Putnam, Lake, and Volusia counties. The majority of cut foliage is grown here. So very small little area, but we are proud of it.
And your family's been here for a long time.
Yes. So I make the 8th generation of Floridians in
yes.
this area on my mom's side. So my daughter now makes 9.
That's right.
And talk about unpaid labor. I do utilize her in our social media and stuff like that. So she will definitely be the 9th generation of agriculturalists in this area. Using her for free as long as I can.
So your family had not always been in the cut foliage bin industry. What else have they done?
Yeah,
to get
that's
up to this
correct.
point?
So I'll give you a little backstory on FernTrust. Right now, like I said, we're a cut foliage cooperative. But before that, this area was really well known for tangerines. We are far enough north that they get a little bit of cold,
right,
but still have a really good sweet taste to them. Prior to me, but I still well aware of it. The freezes that came through in the 80s unfortunately wiped out most of the citrus in our area. And our family was barely in the foliage sector at that time. We had a little bit of leather leaf, a little bit of some stuff in the asparagus family like tree fern and plumosis. But we had to take that and decide, do we stay in the citrus business or do we pivot and looking for something else? And the one good thing about us is we will always be diversified. Not all our eggs are in one farm basket for sure. So instead of putting back more citrus, they really expanded the foliage in this area. Right now, I think we maybe have 4 orange trees left on our farm due to multitude of reasons. But the foliage, we're up to about 200 production acres between all the growers. And how FernTrust really came together is at the time, a lot of container ships were going across seas, and not one grower had enough to really fill a cargo ship. So FernTrust came together as a cooperative of growers that were able to put their products together and then have enough to supply that market space.
So, Victoria, FernTrust was started with a very specific purpose, and that is to bring together a collaborative effort, a cooperative effort of producers to make loads more economical and more efficient for them to ship.
Yeah.
When was it started, and how many growers participated, and have you seen it grow or have you seen it shrink?
So FernTrust came together in 1986. Like I had said, we really wanted to have a presence overseas. Now that has shifted, and we primarily ship in the States and to Canada. So the majority of our products are stateside and, like I said, North America. Outside, we still ship somewhat. We have a couple customers in New Zealand, the UK, a couple other places, but the majority, like I said, I'd say like 90% of our sales are now stateside and Canada. The one really good thing that I love about FernTrust is the way we operate as a co-op. It allows the farmer to grow a good product, and that's all they have to worry about. They don't have to worry about, okay, I've grown this beautiful foliage. Where do I sell it?
Sure.
How do I harvest it? How am I going to get the employees to do those things? So the farmer grows the product themselves, and then FernTrust comes in. We pay them piece rate for everything we cut. We have the cutters. They come in, they harvest the product. We package, ship, market, everything for them. We handle all the social media. And so also on a tax basis, it is a little bit better. We get taxed on the corporate level, and it helps the individual farmers not to have to pay so much in taxes. So it really benefits everybody, but it is nice. Those growers can solely focus on growing a good product and not have to worry about any of the other harder parts. Well, not harder. I would say if you go look at my desk and the dead plants around it, I can't grow anything. So I'm good at selling, not so good at growing. So we let them focus on what they're good at, and they let us focus on what we're good at, which is the sales and marketing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of producers don't want that burden. They don't want to have to handle a lot of the marketing side of it, the sales side of it, even the harvest side of it.
Yes.
That's such a big benefit to them.
It definitely is. We've seen a lot of growth in being able to expand our market share with where we're able to sell. A lot of those farmers, they also don't have the time to contact 200 plus customers a week to see what they're looking for. It started out where we had a larger grower membership here at FernTrust. We're not really an open co-op where just anybody can join. We are pretty selective. And it's kind of dwindled down to what I would say would be family members and family adjacent, I guess you could say. Right. So most of it is my father, David Register's side of the family. It's himself, his grandpa, both brothers are involved, but also my dad's college best friend, John Hoblick, the past president of Florida Farm Bureau. He's a proud member. So that's one of the family adjacents. And then on my mom's side of the family, my uncle Adam Braddock is involved as well. So family, but family adjacent, I guess you could say. So that makes it really special because you truly care about those growers. Not only does your livelihood depend on them growing the product, but us doing a good job here in the office and the packing house and the shipping department, we have direct ties to who it's affecting, which makes you work a little harder even.
Well, absolutely. Victoria, just a little bit on the business side of it though. Are you seeing that that demand for your product growing, shrinking, maintained? Or are you having to go? I mean, obviously it's come from overseas back to domestic.
Yeah.
So there appears that there's large demand. Is it growing?
Yeah, I would say it's an ever-changing shift as to what grows and what doesn't. You have to kind of evolve with the times. So certain products like leatherleaf, which is always and probably will always be our top seller, there's still stores that have it as a staple. It's in every single arrangement. But then some of the top-end designers don't necessarily like to utilize it. So you have to kind of pivot. We like to work about 2 to 3 years out with new products, which is very hard to do. You have to guess what will be popular in 3 years. So we have over 200 varieties of foliage that we offer here at FernTrust, whether it be stuff we grow or stuff we bring in from like a eucalyptus in California or moss from North Carolina, some salal tips, items from Washington State. We really have to be open and willing to change with the times so that we are ever adapting to whatever the florist needs. So one thing that we've really started to do is more outreach with not just the wholesalers that we deal with that carry our products, but the end user, trying to bridge that gap with us as farmers and sellers of a product and the end person utilizing those foliages. Whatever they want is what we need to work towards, which is a tough gamut sometimes. Being able to do that is what really sets you apart from other companies.
So you say leather leaf fern is probably your top productive product that you produce.
Yes, what keeps the bills paid.
That's what keeps the bills paid. What else do you grow? I mean, I know there are a lot of different things when I drive by a farm in Seville, Florida, or South Putnam County, or even into Lake County, that is some people may not even realize that that's going in to cut your business.
So some of the plants that you would see even in your own yards for landscaping, like variegated pittosporum, it's a good attractor for deer. Also, it's a top seller. It's in almost every one of the bouquets that we make here. The other ones that we grow are, some of them at least, are in the asparagus family. So the same family as the asparagus you would eat. Not that I recommend you eat this foliage, but plumosis, tree fern, spring rye, ming, and foxtail. Those lovely hanging baskets that you see on every southern home of Boston fern, sword fern, feather fern, whatever you of the three you would like to call it. We sell quite a bit of that. So sometimes things that you would see at your house that you wouldn't think, wow, that would be in a flower arrangement, is most likely in a flower arrangement somewhere across the country. Those things that grow well in your yard are things that we want to grow because they're easy to grow. They're relatively easy to maintain, and you can get a lot of production off them. I mean, if you think about hedges at your house and how often you have to trim them, we want something quick growing like that.
From a production standpoint, Victoria, I know that's not your area of expertise, but I think a lot of people really have an interest in it. You mean you all will grow as cut foliage growers, grow under saran or screen, shade cloth, but also in natural habitat.
Yep.
What under oak trees and things like that. So a lot of your product is shaded.
Yes.
What do you have a percentage of what it is on y'all's farm?
So you are not talking to the right person when it comes to how to grow a successful product. But from what I have heard on the numerous tours that other people have given here at FernTrust, the things that grow under this saran are mainly things that you want to turn a darker green color and also lay in a flatter shape. So if you'll notice when you go and tour like a leather leaf fernery, for example, that has a shade cloth. I think it's roughly 40%. It has the ability to still have sun come through at the right percentage to get the coloring, the dark, deep color that we really want, but the leaves to still stay relatively flat. The things that grow under natural oaks, which you'll see quite a bit of as well, like a lot of the tree ferns will grow that way, the pittosporum, things like that, you'll see that the leaf shape will be curled a little bit more. The sun has hit them a little harder and they don't have as deep of a color. So the science behind that, I have no idea. I know there's probably some very specific sightings that the University of Florida could tell you. But I do know that there is a reason behind the madness of why you see so many black shade cloths all across our area.
But it comes with challenges too.
Oh, so many challenges.
And so even as we're speaking today, y'all have had some adverse weather that's been challenging, especially when it comes to cold. But that saran, that shade cloth allows for some protective measures to come along with it. Explain to folks what that is when you freeze protect and how it's so beneficial.
So it's going to sound like we were losing our minds when I tell you what we do. But for freeze protecting on the foliages, the crazy thing that we do is when it gets close to 32, we go ahead and start going out to the ferneries and we'll turn on overhead and in fernery irrigation pumps. And those will spray water on the fern and basically cover the fern with a sheet of ice. And how the science behind that works is as long as water is on ice, it stays ice if it's 32 degrees. So that fern will not go below 32 degrees. You will lose some of your immature fern, but the larger fern that's been there and more established, the more mature fern will make it through a couple days, God willing. It won't go over 3 or 4, but of cold frozen nights. And then once it gets to a certain point, temperature-wise, they'll turn those pumps off and let the ice melt where we can go back in and harvest. It's not a fun process. A lot of the times it means the farmers are up most hours of the night going and checking. I will say technology has helped that quite a bit. There's now apps and all kinds of crazy stuff out there that will help you monitor those. more weather stations has also helped to utilize, what the actual temperature is. Here in Seville, whatever it says on the news it's going to be, it's never right. But if we check what it says it's going to be in Ocala, that's close to what it is, because the temperature can be about 10 degrees different in those shade houses versus what it says. So if it says it's going to be 37, that's a little iffy. It's going to freeze. It's going to definitely freeze under those shade cloths. And then there's the science behind, well, if it's windy and it's 37, you don't have to worry as much because the air is circulating. But if it's a non-windy night and it's 37, then you might still have to turn the pumps on just in case. It's a science that I don't like to participate in, and I don't volunteer to freeze protect. As a kid, it was one of the funnest things ever. You got to stay up super late. You got to go ride around with Dad in the truck, checking the little temp watch that'll tell you what the temperatures are. As an adult, I now need my sleep, and I will never, ever volunteer to help with that job unless I have to.
But wind is another thing.
Yes.
And I mean, y'all, water in regard to ice and freeze protecting is a great thing and great aspect that keeps the industry viable in this particular geographic location. But also you can get a lot of wind, and you've had a lot of wind. I mean, folks have known about tropical cyclones in Florida. They talk about hurricanes, but you all have faced a lot of adversity when it comes to wind and water in
and
that regard.
Hail. Last year, luckily we were spared, but I will say another fern grower in our area that we're really close with, Stacy Jones, had a fernery completely ruined from hail. There's rebar holding up those cerans. So if you just think about how significant of a event it takes to completely bend those rebar posts, and there is no insurance coverage. That's something that's not necessarily always highlighted, but as farmers here in the cut foliage industry, you really have to put money back into fixing up those ferneries, making sure that they stay up to date, because come traumatic hurricane or something like that that's going to knock your fernery down, it's pretty much on you. There's no backing like some of the other crops have, no crop insurance necessarily for it. Hurricane damage, one of the things that I liken it to is if you've ever had a stray string on your shirt and you pull it and then your whole shirt frays, that is very close to what the shade cloth looks like. So once it starts to get a little tear, it's going to rip and shred. So that's the problem that we have. As long as it doesn't start that tear, it normally will maintain relatively well in a storm. But when you have mainly the hurricanes that come through, you can't take a saran fernery down before a storm to protect it. And then as soon as a spot is damaged, it no longer has that sun coverage that you need, and your crops will start dying relatively quickly as well. So that's always the fun part after a storm is you have this damage, but then you have to work towards getting that fixed very quickly with a very limited labor source in this area as well.
Definitely has its challenges, but it's a beautiful crop, and it provides a lot of benefit to other folks. And I'm telling you earlier that I did a speech earlier this week, and I tell folks in Florida that we grow for food, fiber, energy, beauty, and pleasure. And it is a beautiful crop. A lot of things that y'all harvest, and that takes you some very interesting places. And especially one of them is in Washington D.C. with the First Ladies Luncheon. Tell us a little bit about that and how it works for Victoria, and how FernTrust has a presence in Washington, D.C.
That is my favorite event for very obvious reasons, but we partner with an organization, Certified American Grown. They are an organization that is dedicated. They run a lot like Florida Farm Bureau, actually, but instead of representing multiple commodities, it is only for foliage and flowers. They focus solely on the benefit of that. The one amazing thing that we get to do, not many amazing things we do, but my favorite of those things is the First Ladies Luncheon. So that luncheon has the Congressional Club is who sponsors that, and then we partner with them. All of the arrangements, the decor, the floral arches, all the beautiful things that will be adorning that luncheon have to be American made and grown.
That's neat.
Yes. So all the flowers, all of the foliage come from the States. Nothing outside of the States is allowed, which for foliage is pretty doable. The flowers is where it gets tricky. Most of the flowers now, it used to be 80% of the flowers grown in the States were exported and 20% were imported. That's now backwards. So 20% is grown in the States and 80% is grown elsewhere. So that becomes a challenge, but it does give a very large number of people in that audience a look at what could be done if we supported American grown flowers and foliage. This year, I'm not allowed to share the time or the place or anything like that for security reasons. And I don't want to be barred from everything in DC, but I did ask what I could share. So they said Renee Tucci is going to be the lead floral designer this year. She's a highly accredited floral artist out of Pennsylvania. And the chairwoman of the event is Jane Marvan. That is Representative Frank Marvan from Indiana's wife. Someone from the Congressional Club, a spouse, is normally the chairperson. We have had Florida chair, which was super exciting. And then this year, like I said, it'll be out of Indiana. So the theme of this year's luncheon is From Sand to Steel, which is meant to highlight the top industries in Indiana. So that means that everything at the luncheon is going to heavily lean into that theme. So from containers to the foliage to flowers, everything is going to accent that theme. We have to all lean in. And like I said, everything has to be American grown and made. So containers, tablecloths,
awesome.
Yeah. All the silverware, they're very picky. We're expecting a very large crowd this year because people are excited about the Trumps being in office. One of the nice things about that luncheon is the first lady always comes and speaks. So the first and second lady will be at the event and Melania will give a speech there. So
that's exciting.
Yes.
How long have y'all done it?
This will be, I think, the 4th year that FernTrust has partnered with it. Beforehand, they did not partner with American Grown. So this luncheon has been long withstanding, but they never highlighted, which seems silly to have an event like that, but they never highlighted American Grown products. So it's something that Certified American Grown really reached out and said, hey, this is a place we would love to help you. We'll give you free stuff. We'll give you the designers. It's all volunteer based. None of those designers are paid to come. It's out of our own pockets that we go up there and volunteer our time. Luckily, they were like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So we've started doing it from here on out. And hopefully it'll be a longstanding tradition, but something we've advocated for at Certified American Grown that hasn't happened yet, but fingers crossed, maybe with this administration, we can get some stuff through. But in the White House, even, it's not mandated that they have to use American grown flowers and foliage. So I'll tell you a quick funny story, but we went up there with Farm Bureau, actually. It was when Trump was in office the last time, and we met with one of his chief of staffs. And he came in and he said, I was going to have orange juice, but we had these flowers and foliage people here, and they noticed that the flowers and foliage weren't American grown, and I was too scared to not have Florida orange juice here on the table. It's like, well, I hate to tell you, but that was my father that was yelling at you about the flowers and foliage not being American grown. So probably a good thing you didn't bring, imperfect orange juice to our meeting today, but that is not mandated. So it's something that we're working towards, because when you think that something that important would utilize American grown products, but they're not. Working towards it.
It sounds like it's a lot of work, and you volunteer it. You put a lot of your time, your effort, your money into it. Is there any benefit that comes back or that you have seen to FernTrust as a result?
Yeah, well, for one, just the social media aspect of it. I mean, that gives us posts that we can utilize for roughly 6 months after the event. We can kind of pull from different things, especially the really well done photography that the White House takes.
Right, sure.
We don't even get those back for 3 to 6 months. So we can really stretch that out for a while. More so than that, what's really great is the number of people and the caliber of people that are in that room for that luncheon. They're going to remember what that stuff looked like. And when you go to meet with them and advocate for things in your commodity and they know what you're talking about, that does wonders. I mean, it really does. So you can say, well, remember that luncheon that you were at in 2025, those were our flowers and foliage, and this matters. And you commented yourself on X, Y, and Z social media that how beautiful the flowers were.
Along that line, Victoria, how many people are there and who is there? Because I think that makes a big difference. As you mentioned that they will remember. Who is it they will remember? Yeah,
so a lot of the bigwigs in D.C., like I said, the first lady, second gentleman has been there before. I have to make sure we add that in. But also not just the representatives and congressmen themselves, senators will come, mainly the female population of those those aspects, but all the staffers.
Wow, that's
I mean,
right.
and I'll be honest, you get more done sometimes with a staffer than you do your
Absolutely.
actual representatives. Also, a lot of USDA people will be there, EPA. I mean, pretty much every facet of agriculture is somehow in that room. Also, the people you wouldn't necessarily think to meet with are sometimes there. High up military are there quite often. It's a very eclectic group of people. I will say that, but sometimes that's what you need because you never know who will be in your corner after something like that.
So you're going to be in DC. This is forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any special plans for different arrangements? Do you have something? Do you change it up every year?
Yeah, so every year has a different theme, and normally it ties into whatever.
That's sand and steel. Yep.
Yes, yeah, sand and steel. So I believe, if I remember, it was like from sand to, it was very similar, the Florida year. I can look it up, but we leaned heavily beach-wise.
Sure.
They did, shocker, beaches. Never would have thought Florida would have beaches, right? And it was a woman from the Panhandle that hosted it, and it went beautifully. There's a new lead designer every year, so that's something that changes. And it's definitely an artistry because you'll notice, depending on the designer, what the arrangements look like. They'll never look the same. So basically, that lead designer will mock up what she wants the table arrangements to look like, and then this team of volunteers copy paste relatively similar arrangements for all the tables. And it's roughly 200 to 300 normally. This year they're expecting maybe 400-500 people in attendance. So it's a lot of florals, a lot of work, especially for it to be a volunteer-based event. I do believe that they said that they're going to lean on some wildflower aspects of it. I'm looking to get my hands dirty and actually get to play with the flowers this time, which is nice. The first time I attended the First Lady's Luncheon, it was quite comical. I went there, I attempted to help, and then suddenly they're like, wouldn't you like to go to the hill and do some hill visits? I was like, oh, sure. And I thought, wow, they really think I'm important. No, I was just terrible at florals. They wanted to repurpose me in a different aspect. So we did. We went, myself and an Alaskan Farm Bureau member actually went, and we advocated on the hill for, we did our spiel about from Alaska to Florida, you've got represented flowers and foliage. She was a peony grower. But this year, they have told me I'm going to be playing with the flowers again. I don't know. Maybe they mean moving buckets of flowers. They might use me for manual labor. Who knows? But it did inspire me. I guess maybe shame me a little bit on not knowing what I was doing as much, but I did take some floral classes after that. And I mean, it's really inspired. Like I had said earlier, we want to bridge that gap between us as growers and sellers of a product with those people that are going to be using it. Now I know the terminology that they're using. I can actually understand when they say like, oh, they need something to be a line flower. Before I was like, does that just mean it's up and down? Like, I don't know what that means. Yeah. They have a whole dictionary of floral terms, apparently, that I had no idea what they meant or what, purpose they served. But by taking those classes and things, it really is helping understand what they need and be able to market to those needs.
That's very interesting. And I can tell you this, I've seen some of your work and it is absolutely beautiful. In fact, we've used it personally in our daughter's wedding and those kinds of things, and you do an outstanding job. But I can see where that knowing and understanding the industry, the other side, could be so helpful. And you garnered that just by this event. That's neat.
Yeah. It does make a huge difference. And you know what they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure. What I think is beautiful might not be what you think is beautiful in an arrangement. To find that common ground of what both of us would like, that's what really helps set us apart.
Well, it sounds like it could change too, because you're working 2 to 3 years out on product and different things in anticipation of what people will want or not want. And that's got to be very, very anxious, to make you very anxious and disturbing too.
Well, especially for those farmers, because like we said, they have to grow those products. So for sometimes 2 to 3 years, they've put a product in the ground, but they're making no money off of it. But they definitely still have the expenses of upkeep and fertilizing and chemigating. Like, for example, we've had Monstera for many, many years, just the plain green philodendron Monstera that a lot of people utilize in their house, just like we had said before, or outside in their yards here in Florida, because it's a beautiful tropical plant. My dad has put in a variegated variety which is beautiful, but it's going to take like 2 years before we can harvest any of that. He made the mistake of posting it on social media. So now every week I get a call like, is it ready? No, you're going to have to wait a while, which is great because we know it's going to sell.
Demand, yeah.
Hopefully it's still popular in 2 years, but it's kind of one of those things that you put in your faith in something and you're just kind of hoping and praying that it works out. Most of the time, knock on some wood, it does, but it's definitely a scary situation sometimes.
It's risky.
Risky.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Very risky. You're good at floral arrangements. I'll attest to that. And what you deem beautiful is beautiful. It is very, I can attest to that.
Thanks for at least flying.
No. I don't have that gift, but you do. I mean, it is. But you also have a gift. You're involved in Farm Bureau. You've been involved for a long time, been involved at the State Board of Directors on the Women's Leadership Committee as well. But start us off. How did you get started, become involved in Farm Bureau?
A personal reach out. I mean,
Sure.
and that I think that's a lot of how our Farm Bureau stories have started.
That's right.
But here in Volusia County, the Daugherty family, they were aging out of, and I love them to death. I think, were they on your leadership group? No, close to it maybe. The Daugherty family, Luann and Sam Daugherty, were aging out of our county's Young Farmer Rancher program back in 2014. They might kill me for saying that. I'm not sure. But I was approached and they said, you would be great as the chair of our Young Farmer Rancher program. I said, ooh, I don't know if I'm ready to do it. And they said, well, no, we didn't ask. Like, you're going to be the chair of our county's Young Farmer Rancher. And as soon as I started doing it, it blossomed into something beautiful, I'll say it. And it's really been a driving passion behind a lot of what I've done. But started that in 2014. We got some programs up and going in Volusia County. Then I was approached by my field man to be an applicant for the Young Farmer Rancher State Leadership Group. So I was honored. I applied and was accepted for the 2016 to 2018 Young Farmer Rancher Leadership Group. So I took that next little step in the process there. And then while on there, my group met. We talked about some different positions that were available. And I put my name in the ring to be the women's representative on the state women's committee from that Young Farmer Rancher Leadership Group. Luckily, I was voted in to do that from my group, and they have not been able to get rid of me on that women's group since then. So from different aspects, I started out, like I said, as that liaison between the Young Farmer Rancher group and the women's committee. And all I would do would be like, man, I can't wait till I'm actually on this committee. It was so exciting because you really find your Farm Bureau family, sometimes and stuff like that. I then went and I ran for my district representative women's position. So I was lucky enough to be elected to do that. And then the vice chair opportunity came up, and then now the chair. So basically a personal reach is all it takes sometimes, and you never know where those are going to go. So never hesitate to reach out to another Farm Bureau member that you think might be good at something, because it could blossom into something that never expected. Because if you would have asked me in 2014 when I got started, if I would have chaired the women's committee and been on the Florida State Farm Bureau board, I would have said, you're crazy. I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way now.
Victoria, I just think it's interesting because you say it's that personal touch, and it is. Mm-hmm. But here, your family has a very close relationship with John, president of Florida Farm Bureau, and yet it wasn't that. It wasn't your dad's relationship with John. It wasn't that. It was a personal touch that somebody went out of their way and asked you to be involved. That's important.
Yes, and John has always bugged me. Mr. Hoblick has always bugged me about being involved in and pushed me. I guess we should say pushed me to be a better Farm Bureau member. But that outside touch of somebody that wasn't in my day-to-day necessarily life at that point that said, hey, you'd be good at this. Obviously, the people closest to you, your parents, your best friends in the Hoblick family and things like that, they're always going to tell you you're going to be good at something. And you do want to believe them, but it's, they are your family and they're going to be as nice as possible. When somebody outside of that normal realm comes to you and suggests something, you almost take it a little more seriously. Like, okay, maybe other people think so too. It's not just my closest friends and family that are pushing me to do these things. It really inspires you to want to be the person they think you can be, which is always great. So, yeah, it was not Mr. Hoblick, surprisingly, that finally made me do it. It was the Daugherty family.
That is a very fascinating part of your story, and I think it's neat. But that story's continuing on, and yet you have been involved with the Women's Leadership Committee very consistently for over a span of 10 years now. What is the most meaningful part of that, your involvement in that?
Whew, there's so many meaningful things. I really like, some people hate it on the women's committee and on women's programs throughout the state, but I love that we're called the heart behind the organization. Yes, we are powerful advocators when we get in a room.
doubt.
We're getting our point across about all of those things, but the philanthropy side and the agricultural education, things like that, that's where my passion lies. I love to go to the Hill. I love to talk to representatives about why Florida agriculture is important, but nothing makes you smile more than when you walk in for an Ag in the Classroom event and you see those little, kindergarten through fifth graders smile when you walk in because they've never seen a farmer, or they don't know that chocolate milk doesn't come from a brown cow, and you're explaining and their mind is blown. You would be surprised the things they think sometimes. But one thing that I'm very passionate about that we started pretty soon after I was on the committee is the Hurricane Relief Fund that we started, and we run through our women's fund. Our women's fund has funded over $200,000, quite a bit over $200,000, I believe at this point, to other 501c3s across the state of Florida. And those are all agricultural based or youth based organizations that we've really touched. That money has really helped a lot of people across the state.
Absolutely.
But that Hurricane Relief Fund that we started, sometimes there's no helping when a disaster comes through. But if you're able to put a little bit of money in that person's pocket and be able to utilize it for whatever they need, whether it be their darn groceries that week or paying their electric bill, paying their farm labor for cleanup, however they need to utilize that to better their farm, they're able to do so. There's no restraints on that money. When it's a completely blind process, we don't know who we're giving to.
Okay.
And I truly think that's some of the best part is when we get those thank you letters back and then we see whose lives we've actually touched. And it might be somebody in our close-knit Farm Bureau family that we had no idea was suffering until, a thank you letter comes that we had given them money. It's something that I've always hold near and dear to my heart. And I hope it continues for many years to come, because that's a program that I'm truly passionate about.
And I want to say, to just take this opportunity too, to say thank you for what you have done on the board side of things, because you're the chairman of the Disaster Relief Committee as well, which
Yes.
ties that closely to what you are passionate about. And you do an outstanding job with that.
Thank you.
It's not an easy thing.
No, and I know we'll never make everybody happy. Everybody's needs are different throughout the
That's right.
state. So we are making some changes in that program, and hopefully everybody will be open and understanding about the reasons why we're doing it. But, our mission is to increase the net income of farmers and ranchers throughout
That's
the
right.
state of Florida. And there's no better way to do it than putting money in farmers' hands after a storm like that. So whatever we are able to help with the Disaster Relief Committee on the state board level, we're looking to do that as well. But that Hurricane Relief Fund, I feel, has a lot of touch throughout the state of Florida.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And you touched on it, especially in regard to our mission. Our mission, too, is to increase the net income of farmers and ranchers and to improve the quality of rural life.
Mm-hmm.
And the Women's Leadership Committee is the heart of Florida Farm Bureau. And I'd say American Farm Bureau as well. Women are extremely involved in agriculture and in day-to-day operations like you are here at FernTrust. Is there anything you could add to in Women's Leadership Committee and other contributions that they make to that mission?
Yeah, we spoke upon the mission, but the vision of Florida Farm Bureau is to be the most effective, influential, and respected farm bureau in the nation, and to be truly recognized as Florida's voice of agriculture. What better way to be a voice for agriculture than to be helping the next generation learn about what we do and Florida agriculture? Events like Ag in the Classroom, all of the ag venture programs that go on throughout the state that the women are the driving force behind, our youth speech contest
That's right.
that we host, all of those things are really pushing not only the Farm Bureau agenda, but really and truly showcasing how great Florida agriculture is. I don't know if those things would get out had it not been for women's programs throughout the state. We are, what I would say, not just myself, but my entire committee, we're advocates, and we are going out and spreading the news of Florida agriculture and everything that we do day in and day out. A lot of us are in day-to-day operations at a farm level, but a lot of us aren't.
That's
a lot of the women in women's programs throughout the state are teachers. And those teachers are touching hands every day with kids and really getting that agricultural knowledge out there. You have people working for FDACs. You have people working at Extension. I mean, think about the touch that Extension has throughout the state. We're a powerful group of ladies, I like to say. So watch out. But I do truly believe we do an amazing job highlighting all Florida commodities and the opportunities that are available in the agricultural sector here in Florida.
It's diverse.
Oh,
There's
it definitely is.
I mean, there's diversity from operation size to operation, what it's actually involved with, commodities and what's being grown. One thing I want to back up, and Victoria, I've known your family for a long time, and generational. You're a generational farm. You talk about looking forward, especially helping young people to understand agriculture, but also there's a benefit looking back. Your family has had great diversity involvement, not only in the citrus industry, cut foliage industry, but also in the cattle industry as well. And I tell you, your family's been involved with, and especially me personally, the slaughter business as well. Tell us a little bit about that side of the family and what it's done from a family standpoint, because it's a broad base that y'all have.
Yes. So a lot of our family members do work here at FernTrust. I have an aunt that's the chief financial officer. My dad is the executive vice president. My grandpa's the president. I'm director of sales and marketing. But we do have a lot of family members that are in diversified agriculture, other aspects. Like you mentioned, especially my mom's side of the family, they have a custom slaughterhouse here in Seville that you can take your meat to be processed to. They work with the county fairs in the area and things like that. And then our own family members, my dad and my uncle, are heavily involved in the cattle industry, and they do the same thing. They obviously sell some calves off, but they grow cattle to the point of harvest and then will sell per pound. So they do a lot of that locally grown beef. And I think it's something, like you said, generational. We've learned from the past, like when the citrus went out and we weren't able to utilize that anymore, that the way to stay profitable is to have your eggs in multiple baskets and be as diversified as possible. So if the foliage industry starts to go down, you've got cattle to back you up a little bit. We have a hay operation as well, just some other items. Then we had some other family members. My sister is one of them who said, there's no way I want to work with my family every day. Can't blame her. It's tough working with your family and living all on the same farm, most of us. It does have its challenges, but she didn't get too far. She works for a nursery grower that sells potted plants. So she didn't get out of ag, but we are seeing people, even her husband is now buying plants, planting them, and now we are harvesting some of his plants. So it's kind of a full circle thing. And like I talked about Charlotte, I mean, the land that we live on, we want to continue in some form or fashion to be agriculturally based. We want to keep those ag lands as long as possible. I mean, I make the 8th generation, but I want her to make the 9th and hers to make the 10th and the 11th and the 12th in some form of fashion of agriculture. I would love for it to continue to be cut foliage. Have it not be that, hopefully there's something else to fall back on with those diversified operations that we have. But that's something that we're definitely passionate about. I mean, when your great grandfather and grandmother were involved in ag, it gives you a stronger tie to your roots here.
Absolutely.
You're really rooted in agriculture and you want to continue and grow and improve everything you're doing to be able to continue to do so for many generations to come.
I appreciate you sharing that with us because to me, it's personal, and it's not only, it shows a lot about your person, but why you're so passionate.
Yeah.
It's not just a love for farming. It's a love for family, because that farm ties the family back together and keeps it together.
That's what we say our 3 favorite F words. Maybe we should be careful with that. But faith, family, and farming. I mean, those are the 3 and Farm Bureau. I guess you can add a 4th. Those are things that everyone in our family are extremely passionate about. We wouldn't be where we are without the good Lord and everything He's blessed us with. And we thank Him every day for what He brings us. But on top of that, we do have those strong ties to farming and want them to continue.
Amen.
Bless the generations to come like we've been blessed.
And we've been blessed. Well, you've been a blessing today. And I thank you for that,
so much.
Victoria. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with the listeners today?
I would just say maybe how to get involved in the women's program would be something that'd be really important. If I go back to how I got involved, I would say get in your local area, your local farm bureau, and see how you can help in that county. If there's not a women's program started, be that leader, take a step, take a chance, and go for it. Start your women's program. And if you ever struggle, you need help, or you don't know where to start, reach out to your district field representative or your district women's representative. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you. Danielle and I, as chair and vice chair of this women's committee, that's our goal. We want to grow programs throughout the entire state. So however we're able to help, reach out, but be that voice in your own county. Then start attending, conferences and things like that, and really come back from those programs with a new passion, hopefully, we would hope, after a Young Farmer Rancher conference or a women's conference or annual meeting even, with new ideas. And I'm going to sound like my dad here, which I always joke that I would never do, but don't get yourself overwhelmed, start small. Don't think because some counties have programs that have 300 people attend. I mean, at our Taste of Volusia, we have 300 to 400 people come. An event like that in a smaller county would be just as successful with 50 to 100.
That's right.
Don't get yourself bogged down in numbers. When here comes my dad out of me, but how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time. So just don't get yourself overwhelmed. And eventually, if you just keep biting away at it, you're going to get to the goal that you want to get to.
Well, thank you for those words of great wisdom, Victoria. And the next time anybody sees an arrangement with leatherleaf fern or some kind of asparagus derivative or a pittosporum or something like that, whether it be at a wedding or a funeral or just at a dining room table, think of these folks down here in Seville, Florida, and what they're doing to bring pleasure and beauty to your environment. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much for supporting the Rural Recharge podcast. We hope that you are enjoying these conversations brought to you by farmers for your benefit. While you're here, please consider giving us a rating or a review. It really does help us to continue to share the stories of our Florida farm families and the important impact they have on your community. Thank you, and have a great day.